Hello and welcome back to another episode of SustyTalk. That's Edie's video series designed to keep you all feeling connected that we launched during lockdown, but which is equally good beyond, especially considering that most of us are probably working from home at least part of the time. I'm delighted today to have on WWF's Head of Sustainable Finance, Raymond Dhirani, in the same week that WWF launched the follow-up to its Our Planet, Our Business movie, and this new one is entitled Our Planet, Too Big to Fail, and it is all about finance's role in averting the climate and nature crises. So I imagine it's been a pretty busy week for you, Ray.
Yes, it has, and thanks for having me, Sarah. As you say, in fact, today our film called Our Planet, Too Big to Fail goes live on ourplanet.com/finance. So it's quite an exciting day, and we had a really good pre-launch event yesterday as well that was attended by people from all around the world and higher numbers than we would have thought at the beginning. So it's been, a very busy but productive week.
And a great film to watch. So just some of the names on the bill for this film is super impressive. So we've got David Attenborough, Mark Carney, Richard Curtis, Steve Waygood. So really in-depth, high-level input, I think, into this movie. And obviously, if you remember back last year, Our Planet, Our Business was really widely viewed and widely discussed throughout the private sector. So I have my fingers crossed that this film will experience the same levels of success. So what about this format have you transferred, and what do you think makes this format so successful?
Yeah, you're right, Sarah. I mean, we had for Our Planet, Our Business, 100 organizations watching it across 50 countries around the world. And then, of course, we had something around 250,000 individual views online. So it's been very successful. And so far, we're only building on that momentum. And I guess what makes this format unique is to try to tell the story and the issues in a way that's digestible, also in a time frame that people can delve into. Sometimes it's easier than a 50 to 100 page technical report to really kind of sit in and listen to a 45-minute video that hopefully has been put together well and gets to the key points and messages. And also, I think the unique thing, and silverback films have been great with this, is combining both the beautiful scenes from the natural world and telling the story of what's happening with our unprecedented wildlife decline. Since 1970, we've lost an average of 68% of our wildlife. It's like wiping the top 10, economies, countries off the map. So telling that urgent story, but also kind of pairing it with these one-to-one interviews with leaders in the industry, with people who are doing different things, and those are helping to build a sustainable future. And I think it's that sort of marriage of approaches that has really resonated with people. And yeah, even just from yesterday, we've had so many positive reactions from around the world. So hoping this film can not only inspire, but to help catalyze a big change that we need in the finance sector.
Because it's not 1 hour of look at how bad the situation is it? There's plenty of time left to say there is time to change. There can be a transformation.
Exactly. We have a window of time, really. I mean, it's less than 10 years now because it's already near the end of 2020, amazingly. But until 2030, we have this decade where we can really start to turn things around. And I think if we don't, we head into the unknown in terms of going through tipping points and irreversible change that I think will be really, really difficult to come back from or to develop from. So I think that's why these next few years are critical, and business and finance play a huge role in that, in terms of so many of the environmental and social issues.
No, I was catching up with my colleagues yesterday, and we were talking about how in March we were seeing this go either one of two ways, that businesses would either sort of deprioritize this or would embed it into their planning. And thankfully, it seems like the latter is happening, and that the net zero movement that was happening before the pandemic has been furthered. But I'm assuming that you must speak to a lot of actors across the sector. So it'd be good to hear about what sort of trends and conversations you've been seeing in recent months and how that has been affected by the pandemic, really.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the pandemic, of course, is very sad, and my heart goes out to everyone affected by it. And health is not just health, of course. It's all the myriad ways in which this has affected everyone. But I think one silver lining is the momentum on sustainable finance has only gathered pace, even though we're still largely all working from home. And that's really encouraging as to the true momentum of this issue. Sustainable finance has entered the boardroom conversation, and that wasn't happening a few years ago even. So I think, given the fact that policy is going one direction, regulation is going one direction, and I think added to that now is customers and future employees or staff are all kind of singing from the same hymn sheet. And I think the last two being the new key additions to actually motivate business from almost even a purely business point of view to capture on this trend. There are 68% of savers who care as much about impact as profit. And we know that within the next 3 decades, there's going to be $30 trillion of wealth transferred to younger generations. And they care about environmental and social issues and want to see how institutions are aligning to that, both for the institutions they work for, but increasingly for where they put their money and how that money has been put to work. So when you have all these trends heading in the same direction, business, finance, they can't not pay attention. They want to pay attention, and they're really trying to figure out how to advance the agenda. And I think for us, ultimately, it's about figuring out how a financial institution can really realign itself to fit under a one planet economy. How does it play its role in the green recovery that we want to see now post-pandemic? So these are critical questions, and I think the time is certainly now for finance to step up and play a big role.
Mm-hmm. That's great. It's good to hear about that it's a snowballing and accelerating trend, it sounds like. And I remember it being talked about, was it the great transfer of wealth or the great generational transfer or something? Was that the phrase?
It could have been, yeah. I mean, it's the biggest wealth transfer in 100 years. So it certainly has can't be ignored. And it's the values by which the younger generation are thinking and feeling is markedly different, and very positive for the world they want to see. So I think it certainly behooves business to pay great attention to that, and that some are already doing that and positioning themselves for it, and by doing so are gaining customers and retaining staff, which is also key for them. So I think it'll start to separate those who are going to lead and to be frank, survive from those who are just not getting it at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's great to hear about all of that, but the film does really showcase the fact that this new finance sector that does all of the great things that you're alluding to really doesn't exist yet, and that despite this conversation, there's still a lot of challenges and a lot of barriers and a lot of laggards in this space. So I wanted to touch on why we haven't got where we need to be so far and what some of the challenges financial organizations are facing now when they want to do good and they want to make this tradition, but this transition, but there is a barrier still.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. There are, of course, a lot of barriers, not least of which is sort of organizational culture and resistance to change, and short-term pressures around the current business model. But I think where management and leadership can take a sort of 3 to 5 to 10 year to that type of time horizon, these issues are looming on the horizon, are looming strong. So they're beginning to respond to that. In the UK and in London, obviously, we have a global mega finance center, so you can't change things overnight. So obviously, there's a complexity there, and added to, of course, the uncertainty from Brexit and so forth. But we also have a massive opportunity next year with regards to COP26 and the UK showing real leadership in not just climate, but in finance's role in addressing the climate crisis as well. So things are building forward. I mean, yes, there are institutional and normative barriers facing the industry. But I think the appetite is rising, and certainly what people expect the finance industry to do is certainly changing. So I think these are all surmountable barriers if we, adopt the right approach, and if people are bold and also not afraid to take risk and make some mistakes along the way.
And the film does highlight a number of things that individual investors and businesses can do, and talks about the different kinds of pressures that can be leveraged from that side. But are there any recommendations here from the policy piece too?
Certainly. I mean, policy certainty around this agenda is critical, and regulatory certainty as well, and helping to formulate a clear pathway for sustainable finance, as is emanating from the European Action Plan on Sustainable Finance, and other parts of the world, are critical, because if financial institutions see that certainty come down the pipe, then they will act accordingly. So there's certainly a piece for the financial institutions themselves. There's a big piece also, as you allude to, around policy and regulation, and also finance sector alignment to the Paris Agreement and sub 1.5 degrees, which will involve both industry, policymakers, and the wider regulatory landscape. But it's certainly possible, and in fact, the finance sector and the policymaking and regulatory sector need to come together and commit to doing this together to align the financial sector to the outcomes of the Paris Agreement and to sub 1.5 degrees. And we should commit to doing that in the UK before COP26, and I think we can do it. And that would send a very powerful signal globally and help us to achieve our climate goals in time. So yeah, I mean, the policy regulatory piece in the UK and globally is really important. But it's different policy puzzles and trajectories are moving at different paces around the world. But the common thread is that they're all going in this direction. They're recognizing the importance of sustainable finance. They want proper taxonomies and definitions around this, standardization. So it's you can't really ignore it, and you can't question the fact that this direction will impact risk and return characteristics going forward for the whole finance industry.
Well, I think the promising thing is that we're just seeing so many events and conversations around this topic. I mean, the fact that the APPG on the environment chose Mark Carney to sort of reopen their proceedings for the year speaks to how important this is at the moment, I think. But aside from all of that, I just wanted to touch on, so I can see that you're calling me from your home today, Ray. So what has it been like to sort of work to produce and launch this film and the accompanying campaign in this situation? Because we'll have a lot of listeners who are dealing with the same sort of project, really.
Yeah, so a good question. I mean, we have done a lot of work on Our Planet Too Big to Fail, with Silverback Films, and the initial idea was, of course, to launch at a really cool physical event, most likely in London, and also have other events in key finance centers around the world. So, I mean, initially with this, I was quite a bit disappointed, I guess, in terms of, well, how are we going to make a big splash, and how is this going to work? But actually, given technology today, given how everyone's working, given platforms that we have, we were able to orchestrate a global launch, in fact, because of the advantage of the UK time zone. Instead of a 100 to 200 person physical event, we had around 450 people dial in yesterday from all around the world. I've been getting messages from different parts of the globe overnight around, the film and how much people have liked it. We had Hiro Mizuno, the ex-chief investment officer of GPIF, the world's biggest pension fund, dial in and play a significant role yesterday, even though it was, he's in Tokyo. So there were advantages to actually everyone doing it from home. And we will, are planning to do a physical event at some point when conditions are right. So I think it's been challenging, and we've had to re-engineer a lot of different things. And we also had to do our one of our last filmings remotely due to the pandemic getting worse in South Africa, and Tabaziva Madzinga being stuck there essentially, and being a new parent. So, but that worked really well, and Silverback did a great job, and the technology used for that. So we were able to kind of still have who we want in the film, but have to do some of it in a different way. We already have a bunch of screenings lined up starting next week. In fact, obviously these are all virtual, but I hope they can have the same impact. It's about inspiring people, showing them that the scale of the issue, but also some of the possible solutions, and getting people to be brave and bold and not fear that change is needed. And actually, that's what's being asked, and that's what's being applauded right now. So I think financial institutions can take hold of that and actually go in this direction without fear, and know that they have support, and that they have the industry, the public, everyone asking them to really try to re-engineer themselves to play a positive role for our sustainable economy.
Fantastic. Well, I don't think there's a better note that we could have ended this video on than that. So thank you so much for your time today, Ray.
Thanks, Sarah. It's a pleasure. Wishing everyone all the best, and that everyone stays healthy.
Great, and the same to everyone at home too. If you've enjoyed this talk, we have a whole host of other episodes available on our site and on our YouTube channel. If you just search for the SustyTalk tag or playlist. And even though lockdown restrictions are easing in some parts of the UK and elsewhere in the world, we will be keeping this series going for the foreseeable future. So do stay tuned to see our next episodes. But for now, it's goodbye from Ray and goodbye from me. Goodbye.